They say blood is thicker than water. But you know what else is thick? The skin on your fingertips after you've been dialing a number that never picks up. Welcome back to Revenge Addict. I'm your host, and you already know what time it is. Go grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Before we dive in, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now let me tell you about a man named Elias Vance and the phone that wouldn't stop ringing. My name is Elias, and I'm 42 years old. I run a small logistics company out of a brick building in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy. I own 3 trucks and I employ 12 people. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery, and I like the smell of cinnamon in the morning. I am not a tall man or a strong man. I have bad knees from a forklift accident 10 years ago, and I drink my coffee black because sugar is a waste of good bitterness. But I am patient. That is the one thing my childhood gave me. Patience and a very long memory. Let me tell you about my mother. Her name is Clara, and she is what I call a human black hole. Everything and everyone orbits around her until they get too close, and then they disappear. She has soft hands and a softer voice, and she cries on command like an actress in a community theater production of a tragedy she caused herself. My father is Richard. He is quieter, but that just means his cruelty has better manners. He shakes hands with both hands, the double-handed shake, which is a move that means either you are deeply sincere or you are deeply calculating. With my father, it was always the second one. I was born third. My brother Leo came first, then my sister me, then me. Leo was 6 when everything fell apart. Me was 4. I was 2 years old. That is young enough that you do not form real memories yet, but old enough that your body remembers the feeling of being put down and not picked back up. The story goes that my parents divorced when I was 2, but divorce is a clean word for what happened. What happened was that my mother decided she wanted Leo because he looked like her father and she could shape him into something useful. My father decided he wanted me because she was quiet and easy and he did not have to try very hard. And me? I looked like both of them. I had my mother's eyes and my father's jaw. I was a walking reminder of the marriage they both wanted to forget. So nobody raised their hand for me. The court gave my mother Leo and my father me, and they put me in the system. That is what they call it, the system, like a washing machine for unwanted children. I bounced through 3 foster homes before I landed at St. Jude's Home for Children in rural Pennsylvania. St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes. I learned that later. I thought it was funny in a way that made my chest hurt. St. Jude's was not a bad place. The nuns were tired but not mean. The food was bland, but there was enough of it. I shared a room with 5 other boys, and we learned to keep our mouths shut and our hands to ourselves. The older kids taught me that the worst thing you can be in a place like that is memorable. You want to be a gray shadow. You want to slide through the hallways like smoke. You want the adults to forget you exist because when they remember you, it is never for something good. I was good at being forgotten. I stayed quiet. I did my chores. I read books from the little library they had in the basement, old thrillers and biographies of people who built things. I liked the biographies best because those people started with nothing and ended with something. I told myself that would be me. But that was a child's dream, and children's dreams are just lies you tell yourself so you can fall asleep. Here is the part that matters. When I was 17, I aged out of the system. That means they give you a bus ticket and a folder with your birth certificate and they say good luck. I had $43 in my pocket and a backpack with 3 shirts and a library copy of a book about Andrew Carnegie that I never returned. I took the bus to Pittsburgh because it was close, and because I heard you could find work there if you were willing to do things other people would not do. I worked as a dishwasher. I worked as a janitor. I worked overnight shifts at a gas station where I got robbed twice and learned to keep the register drawer empty and my hands visible. I saved every dollar I could. I lived in a room the size of a closet, and I ate peanut butter sandwiches for 3 years straight. And then one day I met a man named Gerald who owned a single broken-down delivery truck and needed someone to drive it. I told him I would drive it, and I would fix it, and I would do it for less than anyone else. Gerald was old and tired, and he said yes. Gerald died 5 years later. He had no family. He left me the truck and a note that said, "You earned it." I cried for the first time since I was 12 years old. Then I got to work. I built Vance Logistics from that one truck. I'm not going to pretend it was easy or glamorous. It was late nights and broken axles and customers who did not want to pay. It was arguing with suppliers and fixing my own engines in the rain and eating fast food in parking lots because I could not afford to take the truck out of service for a real lunch break. But I was patient. I told you that. I watched other companies grow fast and crash hard because they wanted to look rich instead of being rich. I did the opposite. I stayed small. I stayed lean. I paid my drivers well and I treated them like human beings and they stayed with me for years. By the time I was 35, I had 12 trucks and a reputation for showing up when I said I would. By the time I was 40, I owned the brick building outright, and I had started a small logistics software company on the side, a little thing I built with a programmer I met at a truck stop. That software sold to a bigger company for more money than I ever thought I would see. I did not buy a fancy car or a big house. I stayed in my apartment above the bakery. I bought the building so the bakery could stay open because the owner was old and the landlord wanted to raise the rent. That is the kind of thing I did with my money. Quiet things. Things that made people's lives a little easier without making a scene. And then my phone started ringing. It started with a letter. A real letter with a stamp and everything. I had not gotten a personal letter in years. The return address said Clara Morrison with an address in Florida. I recognized the name immediately. You do not forget the name of the woman who left you in a state home. I opened it because I am not afraid of ghosts. The letter was short. It said she was my mother and she had been thinking about me and she would love to reconnect. She wrote that she had made mistakes and that time had given her perspective and that family was important. She ended with a phone number and the words, "I hope you'll call." I did not call. 3 days later, my phone rang. I let it ring. It rang again the next day. And the next, I did not answer. I did not block the number because I wanted to see how long she would keep trying. That sounds cruel maybe, but you have to understand I was 2 years old. 2. She had 20 years to find me while I was in the system. She had 20 more years to look me up after I turned 18. My name is not hard to find. Elias Vance. I have a business license. I have a website. I pay taxes. I exist in public records like every other person in this country. She did not look. She did not call. She did not send a letter until I had money. Here is a truth about human beings. They do not miss you. They miss what you can do for them. The difference is subtle but important. Missing someone is about who they are. Missing what they can do for you is about who you are. And my mother, Clara, was always about who she was. The phone kept ringing. Then my father called, Richard Vance. That name hit different because at least my mother had a reason. She was selfish and weak. My father was just absent. He chose to take me and leave me. That was an active decision. He looked at a 2-year-old boy and decided that boy was not worth the trouble. I found out later that he remarried quickly and his new wife did not want a second child in the house. So I became the price of his new marriage. A transaction. A line item in the divorce settlement that got crossed out and forgotten. His first call came on a Tuesday. I was in my office doing payroll. The caller ID said Richard Vance with an area code from Ohio. I let it ring. He called back on Wednesday, then Thursday. Then he started leaving voicemails. His voice was the same as I remembered from the rare visits when I was little, those supervised visits that stopped when I was 7 because he stopped showing up. He sounded older, thinner. He said he had been looking for me for years and he was sorry and he wanted to make things right. I did not believe him, but I was curious, so I did some digging. This is where the story gets good. My mother Clara had married a wealthy man in Florida after she left my father, a retired dentist named Harold. They lived in a gated community and she spent her days playing tennis and posting pictures of her orchid garden on social media. Leo, my brother, had grown up with her. He went to private school. He got a car at 16. He went to college on her husband's dime. But Harold died 3 years ago and he did not leave Clara much. He had children from a previous marriage and they contested the will, and by the time the lawyers were done, Clara had the house and a small annuity but not enough to maintain her lifestyle. Leo was 38 and he had never really worked. He managed a restaurant for a while, but he had a temper and he got fired. Then he managed a different restaurant and got fired from that one too. By the time my mother called me, Leo was living in her guest house and they were both running out of money. My father, Richard, was in a similar situation. He had remarried and divorced twice more. His third wife took half of everything in the settlement. He had a small manufacturing business that went under during the recession. Me, my sister, had stayed with him until she was 18 and then she left for California and never came back. I found her on social media. She was a nurse in San Diego. She had a daughter. She looked tired but happy. My father was living alone in a rented duplex and his calls to me started coming right after his unemployment ran out. They all needed something. My mother needed money. My father needed money. Leo needed someone to blame for his failures, and I was an easy target because I was the one who got left behind and succeeded anyway. That kind of success is an insult to people who had every advantage and still lost. The calls kept coming. My mother left voicemails that started sweet and got desperate. She said she had cancer. She did not have cancer. I checked. My father left voicemails that started apologetic and got angry. He said I was being petty. He said family forgives. He said I needed to let go of the past. Leo actually showed up at my office one day. He walked in like he owned the place. He was tall and soft, and he had our mother's eyes. He looked at my desk and my computer and my window, and he said, "Not bad for the orphanage kid." I said thank you because I did not know what else to say. He said Mom wanted to see me and I should come to Florida for Christmas. I said I was busy. He said I was being selfish. I said okay. He left and he slammed the door so hard the glass rattled. Here is what people do not understand about revenge. It is not about anger. Anger is hot and fast and it burns out. Revenge is cold and slow and it requires patience. I learned patience in the orphanage. I learned to wait. I learned that if you sit quietly enough and watch long enough, people will tell you exactly who they are. And then they will do the work of destroying themselves. You just have to stay out of the way. So I let the phone ring. I did not block anyone. I did not change my number. I let every single call go to voicemail. I listened to them sometimes. My mother's voice got thinner. My father's voice got rougher. Leo left a message where he called me a bastard and then called back an hour later to apologize. I saved that one. I saved all of them, not because I planned to use them, but because I wanted to remember. Memory is a muscle, and I had been exercising mine for 40 years. Then something unexpected happened. My sister Me called. I almost did not answer. But her name on the caller ID made me pause. I had not spoken to her since I was 2 years old. She was 4 when we were separated. She would not remember me, but she found me anyway. I answered on the 4th ring. She said, "Elias," and her voice cracked. I said, "Yeah." She said, "I don't know if you remember me. I'm me, your sister." I said, "I know who you are." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I'm not calling for money. I just wanted to know if you were okay." That broke something in me. Not in a bad way, in a way that felt like a door opening after being stuck for decades. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about growing up with our father. She said he was not physically abusive, but he was absent even when he was in the room. He would sit in his chair and watch television and forget she existed. She left at 18 and never looked back. She put herself through nursing school. She met a man named Carlos and they had a daughter named Elena. She said she had thought about finding me for years, but she was scared. She said she was scared I would be angry at her for not being there. I told her she was 4 years old. She did not have a choice. She cried. I did not cry, but I came close. Me told me about Leo, too. She said Leo was angry all the time. Our mother had spoiled him and then abandoned him emotionally when he stopped being useful. He had been arrested twice for Dewey. He had a gambling problem. He was burning through what was left of Harold's money and he had started pressuring our mother to sell the house. Me said she had tried to help him, but he would not listen. He blamed everyone else for his problems. He blamed our mother. He blamed our father. He blamed me, especially me, because I had made something of myself and he had not, and that was not fair. That word, fair. People who had everything use it like a weapon against people who had nothing. It is not fair that you succeeded. It is not fair that you are happy. It is not fair that you built something while I was busy destroying everything I touched. I have heard that word so many times, and every time I hear it, I think about being 2 years old in a courtroom while adults decided my fate like I was a piece of furniture. I told me I was not interested in revenge. That was a lie. But it was a lie I told myself so I could sleep at night. The truth was darker. The truth was that I wanted them to suffer the way I had suffered. I wanted them to feel what it was like to be alone and unwanted and forgotten. I wanted them to call and call and call and never get an answer. I wanted the silence to swallow them whole. But I am not a monster, or maybe I am. But I am a patient monster, and I know that the best revenge is not destruction. It is demonstration. You do not tear down the people who hurt you. You build something so magnificent that their own failure becomes unbearable in comparison. You let them watch from a distance while you succeed. You let them see what they threw away. And then you let them come to you, and you let them beg, and you say nothing. If you have made it this far, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. It costs you nothing and means everything to this channel. Thank you. The turning point came on a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my apartment reading a book about freight logistics. Do not judge me, I find it relaxing, when my phone lit up with a call from my mother. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. This one was different. She was crying. Real crying, not the theatrical kind. She said Leo had been arrested again. This time it was serious. He had taken her credit card and withdrawn $10,000 from an ATM in Atlantic City. The police picked him up at a casino. He was looking at felony charges. She said she did not know what to do. She said she was old and alone and scared. She said she knew she did not deserve my help, but she was asking anyway. I listened to that voicemail 3 times. Then I called Me. Me told me the full story. Leo had been spiraling for months. He had lost $10,000 in 2 nights. When the credit card company flagged the transactions, our mother confronted him and he shoved her. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to knock her off balance. She called the police. They found the card in his wallet and the ATM receipts in his car. He was in county jail and his bail was set at $20,000. Our mother did not have that kind of cash. She had the house, but she could not sell it fast enough. She was trapped. I asked me what she thought I should do. Me was quiet for a long time. Then she said, you do whatever you need to do, but if you help her, do it for you. Not for her, she does not deserve it. That was the smartest thing anyone had said to me in years. I did not help her, not directly, but I did something else. I called a lawyer I knew, a woman named Denise who handled my business contracts. I asked her if there was a way to buy my mother's house without her knowing it was me. Denise said yes. She said we could set up a shell company and make an offer through a third party. The house was worth about $400,000, but my mother was desperate and the market in her neighborhood had softened. Denise thought we could get it for $300. I told her to make an offer for $250, cash, 7-day close. Denise called me back the next day. My mother had accepted. She did not even counter. She signed the papers within 48 hours. She took the money and she posted Leo's bail and she moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. She did not know I was the buyer. She thought she had sold to an investment group from Miami. That was the first thread I pulled. Here is where the quiet reveal starts. I'm going to tell you something I have never told anyone. I did not buy my mother's house to punish her. I bought it because I wanted to own the place where she had lived while she ignored me for 40 years. I wanted to hold the deed in my hands and feel the weight of it. I wanted to know that every time she drove past that house, and she would drive past it because people always drive past the places they lost. She would wonder who owned it now. She would never know it was me, but I would know. And that was enough, but I was not done. My father called the next week. He sounded different, softer. He said he had been diagnosed with early-stage emphysema. He said he did not have health insurance. He said he was scared. Asked if I could help him with his medical bills. I asked him a question. I said, do you remember my birthday? He was quiet. Then he said, July. I said the date. He said he could not remember. I said, I was 2 years old when you signed away your rights. You looked at me and you decided I was not worth keeping. Do you remember that? He started to say something, but I hung up. I did not block him. I let him call back. He called back 6 times that night. I did not answer. But I did not block him either, because I wanted him to keep trying. I wanted him to feel what it was like to reach out and find nothing, to call and hear silence on the other end, to wonder if anyone was listening, to wonder if he mattered at all. That is the revenge. It is not clever traps or dramatic confrontations. It is just the mirror. I held up a mirror and showed them exactly what they had given me. Nothing. And then I gave them the same thing in return. But mirrors have a way of cracking, and cracked mirrors show more than you expect. The confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday in November. I was in my office doing nothing important when the door opened and Leo walked in. He did not knock. He did not announce himself. He just walked in like he belonged there. My receptionist, a sweet woman named Patty who had been with me for 8 years, was at lunch. So it was just me and my brother in a room full of filing cabinets and the smell of old coffee. Leo looked terrible. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His skin was gray. His eyes were red. He was wearing a suit that did not fit him, probably borrowed or thrifted. He closed the door behind him and stood there with his hands in his pockets. I did not stand up. I did not say anything. I just looked at him. He said, I know what you did. I said, I do a lot of things. You will have to be more specific. He said, the house. You bought Mom's house. I did not flinch. I had prepared for this. Denise had been careful, but Leo was not stupid. He had access to the paperwork through my mother's files. He had put it together. I said, yes, I bought the house. He said, why? I said, because I wanted it. He said, you wanted to hurt her. I said, I wanted to own something she thought was hers. That is different. Leo laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had lost everything and was trying to pretend he was still in control. Said, you think you are so smart, you think you won, but you are just as broken as the rest of us. You are sitting in this sad little office with your sad little company and you think you are better than us. But you are alone. You have no wife, no kids, no friends. You have a building and some trucks and a phone that does not stop ringing. That is not a life. That is a monument to your own bitterness. I let him finish. Then I stood up. I walked around my desk and I stood face to face with my brother. He was taller than me, but he was shrinking. I could see it. The confidence was draining out of him because he had expected me to get angry and I did not. I was calm. I was quiet. I was the gray shadow from St. Jude's sliding through the hallway, impossible to grab. I said, you are right. I am alone. I have been alone since I was 2 years old. I have no wife because I do not trust people to stay. I have no kids because I am afraid I would fail them the way our parents failed us. I have friends, but I keep them at a distance because every person I have ever loved has left me. So yes, I am broken, but here is the difference between you and me. I built something out of my brokenness. You just broke everything you touched and called it someone else's fault. Leo's face changed. The anger drained out and something else took its place. Fear maybe, or recognition. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. I said, I am going to tell you something and I want you to listen. I did not buy that house to hurt Mom. I bought it because I wanted to see if she would notice. I wanted to see if she would ever ask who bought it. I wanted to see if she would ever wonder why the buyer paid cash and closed fast and never asked for a home inspection. She did not notice. She took the money and she moved out and she never looked back. That is who she is. That is who she has always been. She does not care about houses or children or anything that cannot be spent or sold. She cared about Leo when he was useful and she stopped caring when he stopped being useful. And now she is in a one-bedroom apartment and you are in a borrowed suit and I am standing in my office with my name on the door. So tell me, who really won? Leo did not answer. He just stood there with his mouth open. I walked past him and opened the door. I said, you should go, and if you call again, I will not answer. If you come back, I will call the police. This is not a threat. It is a promise. You had every chance to be my brother. You chose to be a stranger. Now live with that choice. He left. He did not slam the door this time. He just walked out and disappeared into the rain, and I closed the door behind him, and I stood there for a long time with my hand on the wood. I was not sad. I was not angry. I was something else. Something I did not have a word for. The phone kept ringing after that. My mother called, my father called. Leo called once and then stopped. I let them all ring. I did not answer a single one, but I did call me. I called her that night and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, you did the right thing. I said, I do not know what that means anymore. She said, it means you protected yourself. That is not selfish. That is survival. I thought about that for a long time. Survival, is that what this was? I had survived the orphanage. I had survived the foster homes. I had survived the gas station robberies and the broken trucks and the loneliness. But survival is not the same as living. Survival is just not dying. Living is something else. Living is letting people in even when you know they might leave. Living is answering the phone even when you are scared of who is on the other end. Living is giving people a chance to disappoint you and loving them anyway. I was not living. I was just surviving. And that was the thing I had to face in the quiet moments after Leo left. I had built a wall around myself and I called it strength. But walls keep people out. They keep everyone out. The bad ones and the good ones, the ones who hurt you and the ones who might have loved you. So here is what I did. I called me back the next day and I asked if she and Carlos and Alina would come to Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving. She said yes. She cried again. I did not cry, but I smiled. It felt strange on my face, like a muscle I had not used in years. I also called Patty, my receptionist, and I asked if she and her husband wanted to come. She said yes. I called my drivers and I told them they could have the whole week off with pay. They thought I was sick. I told them I was fine. I was just trying something new. Thanksgiving was loud. Me brought her whole family. Carlos is a good man. He shakes with one hand and he looks you in the eye when he talks. Alina is 12 and she has her mother's laugh. Patty brought a casserole that was mostly cheese and her husband brought a bottle of whiskey that we finished before dinner. We ate at a long table I borrowed from the bakery downstairs. The food was not fancy. The turkey was dry. The conversation was messy, but it was mine. It was real, and the phone rang. It rang 4 times during dinner. I did not answer it, but I did not silence it either. I let it ring and I let it remind me of what I had survived. And then I turned back to the table and I passed the mashed potatoes and I laughed at something Alina said, and for a moment, just a moment, I forgot to be alone. Here is the final twist. You thought this story was about me getting revenge on my parents and my brother, but it was not. The revenge was just the frame. The real story is about me, because me is the one who called first. Me is the one who said, I just wanted to know if you were okay. Me is the one who reminded me that family is not about blood. It is about who shows up, and she showed up. She showed up when I was 42 years old, and she had no reason to accept that she remembered me. She remembered a 2-year-old brother she had not seen in 40 years. She remembered when everyone else forgot. I asked her about that later, after dinner. When the dishes were done and the kids were asleep and we were sitting on my little balcony looking at the city lights, I asked her how she remembered me when she was only 4. She said, I do not remember you. I remember the feeling of you. I remember being scared and someone holding my hand. It was you. You held my hand in the car on the way to the orphanage. You were 2 years old and you were holding my hand like you were the big brother and I was the little sister. I never forgot that feeling. Someone holding my hand when everything was falling apart. I did not remember that, but I believed her because sometimes our bodies remember what our minds forget. And sometimes the people we saved do not even know they were saved. So here is what I learned. Revenge is easy, forgiveness is hard, but living well is the only answer that matters. My mother and my father and my brother are still out there. They still call sometimes. I still do not answer. That is not revenge anymore. It is just a boundary, a wall with a door, and I have started opening the door for the people who deserve it. The phone keeps ringing. I let it ring. If you enjoyed this story, you're officially a revenge addict. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that the best revenge is a life well lived. I will see you in the next one.